God never said that. This morning, though, we're going to talk about how to lead a positive life. Okay, the power of positive relationships. We're going to look at mostly Philippians chapter 2. So if you have a Bible, you're welcome to follow along there, or you can look at the outline. I'm giving you all the verses there. But this morning, we're going to talk about the power of positive relationships. And based on just looking at that title, there's a couple of different conclusions you could draw from the title. And the first one is that positive living isn't done by yourself. Positive living isn't done by yourself, that life is a team sport, okay? I'm introverted, okay? I know it's hard to believe this is, I'm a kind of a public, this is what I do for a living, and I'm up here in front of everybody every week. But I'm more introverted. I could be very content to be behind closed doors most of the time. That just comes natural for me, and so I'm out of my comfort zone every time I'm in front of a crowd. So I understand though the value and the importance of not doing that. Okay, if our enemy can keep us alone, we're very vulnerable. We need to understand that. Sin thrives in darkness. Sin thrives when you're alone. Okay. So when you most want to be alone and stay isolated, that's probably when you least need to be, okay? But we're talking about the power of positive relationships, and that life is a team sport. It's best done together, and you can't make it through this life all alone. So to experience positive living, it takes other people. It takes positive relationships. Now, it's crazy. We live in a world with so many people. I'm not sure what the count is now. But with so many people, loneliness is at an all-time high. That's kind of odd that in some cities you can't walk down the street without bumping elbows with somebody, yet there are people all over the place that find themselves in a lonely place. So we need other people. You need to say that to yourself all the time. When you feel like you don't, that's probably when you need people the most, when you need to be out among people. But the second conclusion you can draw from that is that not all relationships are positive. This is not rocket science, but we know that all relationships aren't positive. Some are just flat out unhealthy. Some are negative. Some tear us down. Some are toxic. Some are abusive. Some get us involved in bad habits. But not all relationships are positive. Sadly, sometimes we will settle for bad relationships, bad friendships, or whatever it may be, because we fight loneliness so strongly. One of the things we told our teenage daughter when she started high school is, be friendly with everybody, but your closest friends, maybe just a handful, your closest friends should be people who love Jesus. Be friendly with everybody, but your closest friends ought to be people who love Christ. And don't settle. Some of my most productive times and my closest times with the Lord were those spaces in between where I felt as if I was all alone. When I moved to college and when I did those big moves, when I felt like I was all by myself and that God was all I had, I understood that He's all I needed in those moments. But then God will send. We don't need to settle. God will send ultimately. He'll send that person, and He's done it in every juncture of my life where I felt like I was all alone. God would send that godly friend into my life in due time. It was worth being patient. No, I could have. I lived in college. I lived in a Baptist student union. I lived in a building. I lived with another baseball player. Not that I was a baseball player, but he's a baseball player, and there was parties every night. I could have settled easily. I went through a couple of months there where I didn't know a soul, didn't have a friend in the world, or I felt like I didn't. Could have easily settled and been surrounded with people all the time. Parties every night, invitations every day. But don't settle. God will send that godly person into your life, but you need to wait. In the meantime, let God do some stuff in your life. Work on you. What's God want to do in your life? How does God want to grow you in His Word and in prayer? But listen, positive living isn't done by yourself. Not all relationships are positive. Hold out for that good godly friend, because God will send it in due time. But today I want to show you that God wants you to have positive relationships in your life, and the church wants you to have positive relationships. And we want to give you a couple of opportunities here to have, first of all, to begin new relationships here at RC. We're going to start small groups here shortly. That's a prime place for you to build relationships and to get to know some other people if you've been around a while and you don't already. But the second thing we want to do this morning is to help you and give you some tools to help you improve relationships that you're already in, to take them from being unhealthy to positive. And so the first thing we need to understand when it comes to positive relationships is that they're give and take. You want to have positive relationships, it's not all give, it's not all take, it's got to be give and take. You've got to put yourself out there. You've got to be willing to give of yourself to other people, and you've got to be willing to open yourself up to receive from others as well. And you have to think of others, not just yourself. That reminds me of this verse right here. Listen, Philippians 2:4. Let each of you look not only to his own interests, but also to the interests of others. It's give and take. Are you being mostly take? And you're not. You look. Are you giving? Are you fulfilling your role on your side of having positive relationships? I'm going to give you some things this morning. This would be a good place, this message, to kind of zone out, because you think, you know. Sometimes we say, I hear people all the time say, I need a message that's going to step on my toes. And sometimes the reasons the message doesn't step on your toes is because we don't rightly assess ourselves. We're not rightly seeing ourselves very clearly, so we don't think it's stepping on our toes when it probably would be if we were open. This morning it could step on your toes a little bit, especially in the area of kind of assessing where we are. Are we doing the things that contribute toward positive relationships in our own lives? So I want you to check this against the things I'm going to share with you this morning. But it's give and take. The only path to positive relationships is give and take. And so how do I move toward positive relationships in my life? Okay, so here, let me give you 4 things this morning. When I'm in positive relationships, here's what's going to happen. When I'm in positive relationships, number 1, I give and receive encouragement. I give and receive encouragement. Are you an encourager? Are you giving encouragement? Are you proactively being an encourager? We all need encouragement in our lives. I've noticed that no matter how tough your exterior may be, no matter how independent you may come off, you can't survive without encouragement. Encouragement enables us to face difficult circumstances, and when we feel low sometimes, all it takes sometimes is that kind word, that word of encouragement, that little thing to let somebody know that you were thinking about them, praying for them. And so it doesn't take a whole lot sometimes when people are low. And so we need the gift of encouragement from other people. But on the other hand, a harsh word and a critical word can wreak havoc in a person's life. You know, a harsh word can discourage people from it can paralyze people. Sometimes it can paralyze them to the extent that they don't want to take the next step. It can crush their spirit. In Ephesians chapter 4, listen to what it says. This is a memory verse for this week. You ought to try to tuck this away into your heart this week. Read it a bunch of times. Hide it in your heart. Here's what it says, Ephesians 4:29. Don't use foul or abusive language, but let everything you say, look what it says, be good and helpful, so that your words will be an encouragement to those who hear them. You know, we used to say when we were kids, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. That was such a load of garbage, right? That's not true at all. That's mess. Listen, a harsh word, a critical word can hurt far worse than a broken bone. It can last a whole lot longer as well inside your system. While the bone may heal, a harsh and critical word can hang with you for a long time. And so this verse says that if whatever you have to say isn't good, here's criteria. Here's the criteria for whether we should say it or not. Is it good? Is it helpful? Is it encouraging? If it's not, this verse here says, keep that to yourself. There are times we have to use strong, direct, and honest words. Now, I use the word helpful because sometimes a strong, direct, honest word is helpful to a person, especially when they're hung in some destructive behavior themselves. Maybe they're hurting themselves or hurting other people. It doesn't necessarily help to sugarcoat in that sense, in that situation. But if you're the kind of person who is kind of an eager beaver when it comes to wanting to set somebody straight, you probably need to be the last worst person to do it. If you're the kind of person who is just eager, you want to jump the gun, you're just all the time about wanting to set somebody straight, It's probably, your heart does not sound like it's ready to be able to do that. We need to prayerfully, there should be some reluctance in our hearts when we are going to address somebody and kind of shoot straight with them. It ought to come from a heart that has been prayed up and is ready and is soft and is humble so they'll receive it. If you approach them the wrong way anyway with direct words and strong words and like that, if you don't approach it in a prayerful way and in a way that God's prepared your heart to do, chances are they're not going to receive it anyway. But if you come to them prayed up with that direct word and you're prayed and you're honest and you come and you approach them with some humility, then God many times will use that word, that strong and direct word, that they'll receive it. It'll penetrate their hearts. And so listen, there are times we have to use that strong language with others. But notice this verse says that if you don't have something good or helpful to say, that we should not say it. So you've got two choices about how you're going to go and you're going to live your life. Here's the two choices. You can be an encourager or a discourager. Which one are you? If we're being really honest this morning, where do you fall? Are you proactively encouraging other people? Are you discourager to other people? You know, we're a discourager when he talked about using foul or abusive language. Needless to say, that's discouraging. Sometimes we may do that. We're impatient, irritable, want things our way. But regardless of why we use that kind of language, it leaves devastation and destruction. But there's some other ways that we discourage people. Take a look at Philippians chapter 2, 14, 15. Look what it says. Do everything with what? Without grumbling or arguing, so that you may become blameless and pure, children of God without fault in a warped and crooked generation. Then you will shine among them like stars in the sky. Underline those two words, grumbling and arguing. Some versions use the word complaining. I mean, we don't often think about those two things being hurtful. We're thinking about hurtful things. We don't often think about grumbling and arguing or complaining, but grumbling and complaining to me are two of the most discouraging actions that you can take. You like being around people who grumble and complain? Does that build you up? Does that puff you up? Or does that put you down? It does me. I want to run. When I see there's certain folks, and you have them too, that when you see them come into the room, you want to head that direction because it's discouraging, because they're downers. But listen, remember this. Encouragers change the world. Discouragers complain about it. So let's take a minute just to be real honest about this. Are you an encourager or a discourager? Or do you find yourself complaining a lot? Do you find yourself complaining more than you should? Do you argue with others every chance you get? Do you use foul or abusive language needlessly? Do you use your words to improve the lives of those around you? Proactively doing it. Proactively use your words to improve the quality of life for those around you. See, that today you have the power to choose what you're going to be. God gives us the power as Christians to choose. You can choose discourager or encourager this morning. When you're having a heated discussion with your spouse, are you going to be an encourager or discourager? When you have a friend who's getting on your last nerve, are you going to be an encourager or discourager? You got a project going on at work. It's not going so well. Your other teammates, it's not going so smooth. Are you going to be an encourager or discourager? But when you walk out of here this morning, you have the opportunity to be an encourager or a discourager. Let me ask you a couple of questions. I've asked you already which one you are, but let me ask you this question. This may sting a little bit. If you asked the people who know you best which one you are, what would they say? Because that's the true tale. Again, we don't rightly assess ourselves most of the time. But the correct assessment for the most part, if you ask the people who are closest to you, who love you the most, and you gave them permission to shoot straight and to be very honest with you, which one would they say that you are? So listen, when we have positive relationships, we first of all give and receive encouragement. Then number two, when I'm in positive relationships, I give and receive comfort. Are you a comforter? Are you by nature someone who likes to comfort other people? Comfort's different than encouragement. Encouragement always fits the situation. You can tell somebody great job all the time. That always fits. It's always received. It's always welcomed. People always need it. But comfort, on the other hand, is kind of time sensitive. It's kind of time sensitive. It's kind of sensitive to what's happening. Somebody's going through a tough time. Somebody's going under pressure. Somebody is hurting. Somebody is struggling. And that's where we comfort people. There are going to be times in your life when you need comfort. It may be today. Maybe you're going through trials and trouble. Maybe you're having some struggles at home. Maybe you're struggling with your kids, whatever it may be. But we're going to experience trouble like that. We're going to experience trials. We're going to face loss. And these times we need comfort. And that right there is really one of those marks of positive relationships, where there is giving and receiving comfort. That's the mark of positive relationships. So now, guys, we're not notoriously good comforters, okay? And if you say, maybe there's a guy in here that says, I am, well, you're one of very few. Because the reason that's the case is because we're primarily problem solvers. So I know in my case, and when Kel comes in and says something like, I've dumped coffee all over my bag of school stuff, my first thing to want to think or say is, let's fix that. Let's get the blow dryer. Let's put all the stuff on the table. Let's do all this. We'll fix it right quick. And my first inclination is not comfort. Oh, I'm so sorry that you did it. My first inclination is, let's fix it. Let's get it all out. I'm just go immediately to that. And that's why most guys are not good comforters, because they are generally, and their default is problem solving. So we need to work on that, needless to say, guys. But we get it honest, because it's through the years that men are typically bad comforters. When in the book of Job, we have an example of that. Job, needless to say, going into the story, he was going through a horrible time and all this stuff, and these guys come around him, and frankly, they stunk at giving and receiving comfort. So he confronted them about it. And here's what Job said. He said, I have heard all this before. What miserable comforters you are. I could say the same things if you were in my place. I could spout off criticism and shake my head at you. But if it were me, I would encourage you. I would try to take away your grief. See, at different times in our lives, we need to be comforted. We need other people to comfort us. We need relationships. You were built to exist within relationships with people. So, but we need people. God created us for relationships. But then there are times that God supernaturally will comfort us Himself. That God will supernaturally speak to our hearts, and He will puff hope into us, and He will comfort us. And the reason He does that is so that we can comfort others. In 1 Corinthians or 2 Corinthians chapter 1, it says that He comforts us in all our troubles so that we can comfort others. When they are troubled, we'll be able to give them the same comfort God has given us. So see, the number one way God comforts other people is through people. The number one way and the primary way that God provides comfort is through other people. So how do we do this? If the number one way and the primary way that God comforts people is through other people, how can we be most comforting to others? Let me give you 3 things very quickly. How to receive and give comfort. The first thing is this: be open and honest about your troubles. Be open and honest about your troubles. That's both comforting, that is proactively comforting to me. It doesn't mean that we are comforted by somebody else's trouble necessarily. It just means we're comforted in the fact that we're not the only one going through something. It is helpful when you're comforting somebody to let them know, look, I can relate with it. You have to let somebody know, though, about the trouble that you're going through. How about this one? Don't be afraid to rely on others. You have to learn to lean on other people. I may struggle with that. But we got to learn how to lean on others. We need to learn how to lean on people. We sometimes in our culture we exalt the strong and the silent and the self-sufficient type. But that's goofy, because the strong, self-sufficient type are usually alone. They're usually all alone in their struggle. And so, listen, One of the ways we give and receive comfort is not being afraid to rely on other people. You were created for relationships, and you need to learn to rely on others. But then the third thing is be alert for opportunities. In those moments when you're strong, be alert on how you can help others and you can provide comfort to them. Now, listen, if we'll look around tomorrow, even today, this afternoon, wherever you are, you're going to spot people. You may, out of the corner of your eye, spot people that need comfort. Here's the thing. We need to become people who are comforters in that when the tables are turned, at some point the tables will be turned, and you'll be the person that needs comforted. And if you've been a comforter all this time, odds are good that there will be a line of people there to comfort you if you've been that. So learn how to be, and ask God to help you to learn how to be a comforter. Give and receive comfort. But here's the third thing. When I'm in positive relationships, I give and receive motivation. I mean, check your positive relationships up against these things. Are you a person who offers motivation? There are times in our lives where we need to be motivated. And one of the reasons we don't like the word motivated is sometimes we confuse it with the word manipulated. But there's a vast difference between manipulation and motivation. Let me tell you the difference. Manipulation is about getting what we want. The agenda is, I have something I want, and I want to get it however I can get it. That is having our own agenda at heart. But motivation is about having somebody else's interests at heart. It's unselfish. Motivation is about having the other person's interests at heart. And so we all need people around us to motivate us, because if we're left alone, a lot of us will not do what's best for us. We need people in our lives to motivate us. If we are left alone, remember, being alone, you are left vulnerable to the enemy. And we need motivation. We need people around us that will motivate us toward Jesus and toward Christ. Left all alone, a lot of times we don't choose what's best for us. Like for me, diet. If left alone in that, without accountability, I will choose the Big Mac. I will choose it. I will not choose a salad. I don't exercise. I have somebody I try to exercise with regularly. But if I didn't have his help, if I didn't think he was sitting there in his truck waiting on me in the parking lot at 6:30 in the morning, odds are not good that I would get up and make the best choice and do that. But when it comes to spiritual growth, I also need that. I have some people in my life that are helping me spiritually. Do you have people who are motivating you toward Jesus? Do you have people who are spurring you spiritually? The Bible says that the wise student has wise teachers. Ecclesiastes 12 says this, that the words of the wise are like cattle prods, painful but helpful. The motivation leaks, it seems to. I can be really motivated one day and under-motivated the next day, is because it seems to leak. It seems that, the world also can kind of drain you. Sometimes I'm drained, sometimes I'm squeezed, and sometimes motivation leaks, and so we need multiple sources of motivation. I can be motivated for a while, but then the world drains me and it leaks, and I need other people to motivate me. And we need to build our lives so that there are people in our lives that are motivating you. Can you think of somebody in your life right now that motivates you, that helps motivate you spiritually, that's spurring you? You got somebody that's spurring you? You need somebody. That's one of the reasons that we're promoting small groups, is because small groups are a source of motivation. I need a small group motivation just as well as you need it. I'm in the journey with you. I struggle with some of the same stuff you do. The enemy attacks me in some of the same areas that you're attacked in. Let me tell you, the primary area is in the area of my quiet time. There is not a day that goes by that the enemy does not try to distract, detour, pull me away, get me started on something else, give me a phone call when I'm trying to have my quiet time, anything to get me off track. I need somebody. Listen, we need these people in our lives. We need a small group that can spur you to action and to keep you going when you feel like laying down. And see, that's God's plan all along, that we would be surrounded by people who would help us grow and to help us live out our faith. You are in danger. We don't see that, but you are in danger when you're by yourself. The enemy knows it. And he'll attack you. He will attack you primarily when you're on your own to keep you isolated, to keep you in your sin. In Ephesians, Paul talks about what the church is supposed to do. Listen to what he said, Ephesians 4. That he makes the whole body fit together perfectly. As each part does its own special work, it helps the other parts grow so that the whole body is healthy and growing and full of love. So we need motivation so that we can keep growing, so that you can stay healthy and so that you can be full of love. And see, my encouraging you to be a part of a small group is certainly not manipulation. I don't have anything personally to gain by you getting in a small group. The church at large does, because the church will become stronger. The church will become more like what it's supposed to be. And we'll have greater unity if you'll do that, but I don't have anything personally to gain. It's more motivation. Look, we don't want things from you here. We want things for you. And the best thing for you and the best thing for me is certainly not isolation, but it's being around people, having people around us on a daily basis that can encourage and motivate and help us and spur us spiritually. And so I give and receive motivation. Our fall term of small groups will begin a couple of weeks into October. We've got sign-up sheets out there this morning at guest services counter to just kind of gauge interest. We'll be full steam sign-ups for the rest of this month, but we want to encourage you to go to those sign-up sheets and sign up as soon as you can to be a part of a small group. And so to have positive relationships in my life, I have to give and receive encouragement. How are you doing in that? To have positive relationships in my life, I have to give and receive comfort. Do you have eyes that are looking for folks? Do you catch eyes with people? Do you notice some people's countenance that is struggling? To have positive relationships, I have to give and receive motivation. Is there somebody in your life that you're spurring spiritually? I mean, are you being spurred spiritually? Do you have somebody that's spiritually spurring you to keep going when you don't feel like going? And are you doing it? Is there somebody in your life that you're helping to encourage and motivate to keep going? So when I'm in positive relationships, I'll do those things, but here's the fourth thing and I'll be finished. I give and receive help. I give and receive help. That sounds like it would be very simple. But everybody in their lives needs help at one time or another. There are times when I just can't carry the load and I need help. There are times that you can't, with all the problems and the struggles and the trials and the stuff that you have going on in your life, that we sometimes feel like we want to collapse. But everybody needs somebody there for them during a time of need. This may be your time of need right here. Listen to what Paul said in Philippians chapter 2. He was talking about Timothy and the person in his life that helped him. He says, I have no one else like Timothy who genuinely cares about your welfare. All the others care only for themselves and not for what matters to Jesus. But you know how Timothy has proved himself. Like a son with his father, he has served with me in the preaching of the good news. So listen, Paul knew, if Paul knew this, if it's true for Paul, it's true for me and you, that we can't accomplish all that God wants for us to do if we don't have other people in our lives. We're not Superman, Lone Ranger, all fictional stuff, all right? We're not going to achieve, we're not going to become who God wants us to be if we are Lone Rangers. And he couldn't be the person that God wanted him to be without the help of other people. And in the same way, God created us to help other people. Now let me give you some ways this morning that we can help other people. 3 ways, and 3 things we need to be honest about. Here's the first thing. We have to be able to admit our weaknesses. We need to be able to admit our weaknesses. How are you at that? We all have them. We may as well admit them. Philippians 2:3, don't be selfish. Don't try to impress others, but be humble, thinking of others as better than yourselves. I mean, the reality is there are things that other people are better at than you are. I have to see that. I need to see that more clearly here because that's the way things are going to be best done here. I can't do everything. You can't do everything. You need to hand off things that where other people are better than you. Speaking of others as being better than us sometimes can be humbling, but having this attitude, it helps us and it helps other people too. if you have a humble attitude, there are many times in my life when I need help where I'm not good in an area and I need to ask someone else for help. In other words, I played basketball. I was a terrible three-point shooter. It didn't make any sense for me to shoot three-pointers. I wasn't going to hit any. But the pride in me, may overcome me in the middle of a game where I go, I may hit this one. I'd miss it. Clang. I'm not a three-point shooter. I'm 10, 12 foot in. I need to know my strengths. I need to know where I'm weak. And so it helps to know that. Sometimes I need to pass the ball to somebody that could take the shot. Pass the ball to somebody that has a realistic chance at hitting it. And that's what I need to do in life. I need to pass the ball to people who have strengths that I don't have. And so sometimes we don't want to pass the ball because we feel like we're not good enough or because we feel like it's going to be a burden to somebody else. But when I pass to them, I get the help I need and they get to use their gifts. And so look, when we pass the ball to somebody else, sometimes it brings them alive and they find the fulfillment and happiness that they didn't know they didn't know because we're created to use our gifts and to help other people in their area of weakness. So it doesn't just help me when I pass the ball, but it helps them because they can use their strengths. So what are your strengths this morning? Or where are your weaknesses? That's where you need to pass it off to somebody else. But then the second thing is you need to know your strengths. You need to know you have strengths. Positive relationships are give and take. Life is a team sport. We need to know what our strengths are. And so I need to be able to use my strengths and to use my gifts that God has given me to help people in my life. Ephesians 2:10, look what it says. It says, "For we are God's masterpiece. He has created us anew in Christ Jesus so that we can do good things He planned for us long ago." Do you understand that? Will you let that in your system this morning? You can change those two words. It says, "For we are His masterpiece." Why don't you change that to, "I am." For I am His masterpiece. Would you let that in your system this morning? That God this morning, that you're not an accident, that you're not garbage, but that God created you and He gave you particular gifts that you have for a purpose, and that purpose is to do good things and to help others with your strengths. And see, you're never going to be happier, and you're never going to be more fulfilled, and you're never going to find greater purpose than when you're using your gifts and you're using your talents and the things that God has given you to help other people. So you need to know your strengths, and you need to use them to help other people. And then the third thing is this: look to serve beyond your team. That just means look to serve beyond the people that are that your primary relationships. Look to serve people who are beyond your immediate relationships. In November, we're going to take a group of you to Mission 615. Some of you have been there before. It's a ministry to the homeless in Nashville. They feed people. They give them clothes. Primarily, they give them a place to go to encourage and feel the love of Jesus. But this is a prime opportunity for you to look beyond your primary relationships and to serve beyond your immediate relationships to help people. This past summer, you did that. We had I called the school board and I asked for 4 or 5 families that really needed help with food over the summer. You guys were great in bringing food. The shelves were always stocked with food, and we want to continue to do that, probably about quarterly, bring in food to help people, because there's on a weekly basis somebody calling and saying, "Hey, I need food." That's one way you can look beyond you need to be doing this. Looking beyond just the people who are primarily in your life to see other needs, how you can help. Tom is coordinating right now a trip to go to Nicaragua in June 2016. We'd love for some of you to participate in that trip, to go there and show the love of Jesus, to serve the needy and help the poor and all of those things. But that's another way that you can look beyond your immediate relationships and to get outside your comfort zone. We have tons of opportunities. I want to give an idea shortly about something we can do to take advantage of the Halloween. Look, Halloween is a built-in opportunity. When else can you have, some people have tons of people, but when else can you have unchurched and lost people coming to your door to knock on your door? It's a prime opportunity for us to take advantage of, and a great opportunity for you to look beyond your main relationships or your immediate relationships to help people. And so look, there will be numerous opportunities for you if you want to begin helping those beyond your comfort zone. And when you take the step to serve outside your comfort zone, it'll change your life and their lives as well. So let me remind you of a few things as we close this morning. That listen, life is a team sport. Odds are good that if you're in isolation right now, if you're by yourself, you're probably having your lunch eaten spiritually. Because Satan will particularly attack, and you're most vulnerable when you're alone in your sin. But when you invite somebody into your struggle, you can find strength. You're not going to have positive relationships in your life if you don't learn to show love to others in real ways by giving and receiving encouragement, by comforting people, by offering motivation, by helping others. There's not a better way to create new positive relationships than when you get plugged into a church and you get plugged into a small group. There's no better way to put God at the center of those relationships than to do it within a small group. The Bible says this. It says in 1 John 4:8, but anyone who does not love does not know God, for God is love. Listen to that again. But anyone who does not love does not know God, for God is love. That right there hurts a little. Because let me tell you what that means. That means that how you and I treat other people is a prime indication of our relationship with God. And our relationships with other people or how we treat them says a lot about how well we know and how well we love God. And if we don't love others and we don't show that love through our actions, then we can't possibly know God, because God is love, and you can't be in a right relationship with God if you're not right in relationships with others as best you can be on your part. So answer this question this morning. What do your relationships with others say about your relationship with God? What do your relationships with others say about your relationship with God? What does how you treat your family, your friends, co-workers, and neighbors say about how close you are to God? Do you work for positive relationships? Are you proactively working for positive relationships in your life by encouraging people, comforting those who need comfort, motivating people, spurring others, helping those around you, having eyes to see? Or do we walk around with our eyes down all the time? Are you active in your church? Will you be a part of a small group where you can learn to give and receive the elements necessary for positive relationships in your life? That's where we learn to practice them. That's where we learn we talk about be patient. That's where we learn to be patient in community with other people. Love one another. That's where we practice that. Be devoted to one another. We practice that inside this arena, the small groups. We practice the one another's. See, life is hard enough as it is. But it is brutally hard when you're by yourself and you're trying to do it by yourself, or if you're trying to do it without God. You don't have to do it that way.